All right, hey guys, so I'm gonna walk you through how to finish up your bread. So when you come home from AE day, you are going to have a Ziploc bag with a very shaggy dough in it, okay? It's gonna look something like this, all right? When you get home, I do recommend putting it into a mixing bowl right away so that it can continue to do what it needs to do in a bowl and not in a plastic bag. And the first step that you're gonna do is going to be number 4 on the document that I'm sending out that has the recipe on it and the steps. So this is gonna be step 4. So you're gonna have your super shaggy dough like this, and you're gonna do what's called stretch and folds, okay? And all that means is you are going to grab the dough with your hands, you're gonna kind of stretch it and fold it over on itself, okay? And it's gonna be kind of sticky, all right? And you're just gonna do that a few more times around the bowl until your dough looks nice and smooth, okay? So I'm just gonna stretch it and fold it over on itself a few times. Usually about 6 to 8 does the job. And then you will move on to the next step, which is just to let it sit for like 8 hours. Okay, so now I've done my stretch and folds a few times. This is now what my dough looks like. It's much more smooth. It's almost in a ball shape. And then we're just gonna cover this up and leave it alone for about 8 hours. Okay, so it has been about 8 hours since we did our stretch and folds. There is no exact science on how long it takes for fermentation to be complete. Depending on your humidity in the air, the temperature in your house, it's gonna change. So if your house is pretty warm, it may take less than 8 hours. If your house is pretty cold, it may take up to 12. So what you're going to look for to know that fermentation is complete is bubbles. All right, so looking at the bottom of the bowl here, you see all these little bubbles in the dough. That is all the lactic acid and the bacteria in the starter eating the flour and giving off carbon dioxide, okay? Also, if you'll notice, there are some bubbles on the top of the dough here, all right? And that is telling you that there is enough air in the dough that it's going to rise when you bake it, okay? So next step, we are going to flour our surface. And you wanna make sure your kitchen counter is nice and clean for this. You're gonna flour your surface just a little bit. You don't wanna do too much flour because then your dough will not want to stick to itself. I'm gonna see if I can tilt this down without this thing falling over. The answer is no. Okay, sorry about that. I had to fix my camera. All right, so I've floured my surface here. I'm going to dump my dough out on the counter very gently, and it may take a little bit of coaxing to get out of the bowl. You don't want to deflate it too much, so when you're grabbing it out of the bowl, just try to be very gentle. And the humidity, because it rained today, is very high, and that makes it want to be a little more sticky. All right, okay, back again. Took a little bit more work to get it out of the bowl than I anticipated. So what you're gonna do now that you've got your dough out of the bowl, you're going to kind of stretch it into a very loose rectangle. Okay, it does not need to be perfect. You just wanna get it into the general shape of a rectangle. All right, and trying not to deflate all the little bubbles in the dough. And what you're gonna do is start on one of the shorter sides of your rectangle, so that's the side for me, and you're just gonna roll it up like a log, okay? And then I like to kind of tuck these ends in while I'm rolling. This is probably easier to see if I do it this way. Tuck these ends in as you roll. And then you want the seam where this part, you want that to go on the very bottom so that when you bake it, it doesn't split open on you. All right, so I'm gonna move this back a little bit, tuck that under, and then tuck the ends under as well. You wanna make sure that your bread is shorter than your loaf pan, okay? Because otherwise it's gonna be a really wonky shape, okay? So this next part is building surface tension, and right now it does not look super cute. It kind of looks like a sad puppy. All right, so we want to tuck this in and make this super tight, okay? So the way that you're gonna do that is push and pulls, okay? So you're gonna pull the bread back towards you on the counter and then push it back away from you. What this is doing is creating surface tension on the top of the dough so that when you do bake it, this top part is gonna be nice and tight and is going to make a nice dome shape. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one more time. All right. All right, so now it looks like a loaf of bread. Okay, so now we're gonna take this and put it into a slightly oiled loaf pan, and I am talking very slight. Okay, I got my loaf pan, olive oil. I'm going to do just a teeny tiny little drizzle, and then I'm gonna wipe the loaf pan out with a paper towel. A little dab will do ya. You don't want a ton of oil in the bottom of it. This is just so it doesn't stick to your pan. It comes out nice and clean, okay? Then you are going to plop your dough very gently into your loaf pan, okay? And you see how much space there still is in that loaf pan, okay? Quite a bit. When this is done proofing, you're gonna put this in the fridge overnight, cover it with some plastic wrap. When it is done proofing, the top of the bread should be pretty much level with the top of the pan. And the bread is going to occupy almost all this empty space in the pan, okay? So it's gonna be pretty full. So this is steps 5 and 6 on your document, on your recipe card.